hypermature cataracts also?
No, Dr. Deepak, please.
Of course, it's not possible. Where you can see the fundus in those are the situations where you can do these things. I'm referring to those situations only. Of course, it's a light-based phenomenon. You can't do OCT in mature cataracts.
And some people said that if there is a residual cylinder or some residual power is left, do LASIK. What is the comment of the speakers about this?
What the Dr. Suvira just told us regarding that matter.
No, what's your question? Say again.
If you have residual cylinder or some
Residual cylinder.
Yes, after cataract surgery. One of the speakers yesterday, Dr. Ramamurthy, said that I do LASIK in all cases,
So that
in
depends.
multifocal lenses.
I think that
Not necessary. In fact, some of the patients go worse.
I think that depends on what exactly you're left with. What is the magnitude of the cylinder and how much is disturbing is how much?
1.5.
Yeah, 1.5 is a significant cylinder.
I think,
Yes.
I think
So I
our time
guess-
is over, so we have to hand over to the next chair.
I think that needs to be addressed. 1.5 of a cylinder is going to lead to significant distortion, and that fussy patient is probably
Thank
going
you
to want
all
to have LASIK. Thank
for
you.
your presence.
Because this is President's guest lecture.
I just came to ask you one question. Where in your program is David Andrews? That's all.
Yeah. I think तुम्हारे पास book है? Good morning, everyone. This is time is 9, and I think we should start our proceedings on time. And this session is mainly two president's guest lecturers and one foreign faculty. However, one of the guest lecturers, he could not make it for the reasons which beyond his control as well. The president's guest who could make is my mentor. He's Professor Eugene De Juan, Jr., because his father is also goes with same name and senior. And brother, his son is Eugene De Juan III. During my formative years, that is 20 years ago, I spent a gala time with Gene in 1996 and 97. And I watched his greatness, his vision, his progress, his spectacular vision towards the world. And most of it I imbibed. And thank you for that, Gene. Whatever I am today is his contribution. Indirectly, he contributed to the upliftment of Indian ophthalmology. I would now invite Gene De Juan for you. He has two experiences to share. However, back to back, I suggested that we'll have the Andrew's talk in between, two of his talks. Gene.
Thank you so much. It's so special for me to be here. Dr. Maji, it's hard for us to believe that it was 20 years ago that you were at Johns Hopkins working hard and making important contributions together. And it was special. He's a remarkable man, and I'm sure many of you know. And so it's a big honor for me to be here. I really do appreciate it. This is basically at the time you were there at Johns Hopkins. This was in a television commercial. The people who, from Apple, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that do. And Dr. Maji has this view. With regard to me, and the purpose of this talk really is to share kind of over a 30-year period, my professional career, things that I thought about at the time and where they ended up now 30 years later. So my father and I, taken shortly my first year, I like to say this was taking in honor of my decision to go into ophthalmology. He was an ophthalmologist, and he said I could do anything I wanted after I finished medical school. Dr. Maji, you know, like I indicated, I'm very honored to be here as a guest for the Congress, and appreciate the invitation so much. I trained at Johns Hopkins, and then for my vitreoretinal training, I went to Duke University where Dr. Robert Mockemer was. And Dr. Robert Mockemer was the founder or the inventor of vitreoretinal surgery, closed vitrectomy, basically like we do now. I was there for 9 years, and it was a very good time, and I met some very special people that I will talk about. But after being there for about 9 years and doing a lot of development, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to work with engineers in a lab called the Microsurgery Advanced Design Lab, or the MAD Lab, and decided to do this and was invited to go back to Johns Hopkins and establish this lab in clinical practice. And shortly thereafter, that's when Dr. Maji came. So some of you might recognize some of these names if you don't know if you don't know the way they look now. This is Dean Elliott, who's now head of vitreoretinal surgery at Harvard and Mass Eye. This is Mark Humayun, who is the very distinguished professor, got the Medal of Honor from Barack Obama for his intellectual contributions. Myself, Phil Ferrone, who has been in leadership positions in the American Society of Retinal Specialists. Here are some of my corneal colleagues at Hopkins, Walter Stark, John Gotch, Bob Avery, and this was Julia Howler's 3 children when I had gotten my midlife crisis car. Just to kind of look at what happens over the years, when I was at Duke, there was a young third-year medical student who said he wanted to come and work with me. Sure, you can come and work. I didn't have an idea of what we would do together, but I had a package of old experiments that had never been written up. I said, here's this box of experiments and data. Please look at it, write it up, and then you can be a co-author. And that was his first paper. After a year of working together, we talked about the procedures, what things he was interested in, and I had an idea about some retinal tacks, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And he loved this idea of making tacks somehow functional. So here's Mark, here's his wife, and two beautiful children, and this is when we had left Johns Hopkins together to go to USC. One of my other colleagues that I trained with was Dr. Paul Sternberg, also a vitreoretinal surgeon, also went to Duke with me to train with Dr. Mockemer. 2 years ago, he was the president of our American Academy of Ophthalmology. And so it's just the people that have crossed my life have made very, very important contributions. Here we are as fellows, congratulating one of our mentors, Reese Landers, at Duke University. There's so many people that have been fellows with me that have now become very proficient and famous completely in their own right. Obviously, Dr. Machi, Kirk Packo, Carl O. If you are vitreoretinal surgeons, you know these names. Anat Lowenstein, while she was with me at Johns Hopkins, she wrote 20 papers. Bob Avery, many, many others. This is Hans Grieshaber, when Grieshaber Instruments were an independent company. Kirk Packo, when he was very young, as me, had different color hair. I've dyed it white. This is Dr. Machi, Anat Lowenstein, Carl O. Now Kirk go from here to here, and there's Mark, there's Carl, and myself. Peter Campachero is another colleague of mine at Johns Hopkins. He's made very important contributions, and it was very interesting to me. This is Robert Mockemer. This is me. This is Tetsuo Hida. Peter Campachero, my wife Libby, Dyson Higginbotham, who was a great machinist. And here we're working hard, you can see, at one of the meetings. And Peter had suggested that I should do drug delivery. I've now been very active in drug delivery for the last 20 years. So when you start, you don't always know where you're going to end up. This is my beautiful wife when we were married on our honeymoon. Now this is our 4 children and 3 son-in-laws and 4, now 6 grandkids. So just to talk about the innovative process a little bit and how it's a little bit different than the scientific process. Science, we know, starts with a hypothesis. We hypothesize something and then we design experiments to test these hypotheses. Discovery is a little bit different. We actually start out on a journey. We go somewhere where we haven't been. We go down a trail that we haven't been, and we don't know what we're going to find. But we discover something that we were looking, but we didn't actually know what we were going to look for. Innovation is different. Innovation starts with a problem. And it doesn't really require kind of the same type of questioning. And innovation, if you solve the problem, it doesn't matter how you solve the problem. It doesn't have to be sophisticated or complicated, although it can be. So knowledge, or if you like, science, and its application, which I like to think of in innovation, is critical to our human development. Innovation is also different than an invention. People like to, they use these words interchangeably, but I like to think of an innovation as something that changes the way we act. So great innovations are things that change the way we do things. And maybe phacoemulsification, closed vitrectomy. These are things that drastically change the way we did it. Whether it's blue or red or long or short can be an invention, but it doesn't really change what we do. I like also to think in medicine that the innovators are very rare. We can almost count the innovators. There are many scientists, and we don't know necessarily all the scientists, but we tend to know the innovators because they affect what we do every day. I like to think of them more like poets than writers, or artists than painters. Why don't we have more innovators in medicine? Well,